Welcome to the Mini Book Podcast, African American Books Edition. I am genuinely excited that you're here with us today because, well, we have a really special one lined up.
It is great to be here, and special is definitely the word for it. This one is a heavy hitter.
Today we're looking at a truly significant collection. It's titled Our History Has Always Been Contraband, in Defense of Black Studies. And I want to mention right up front, this anthology was edited by three absolute powerhouses: Colin Kaepernick, Robin D.G. Kelley, and Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor.
Yeah, that's a fascinating trio right there.
Yeah.
You've got Kaepernick, the activist and athlete.
Right.
Then Kelley, who is, one of the most respected historians of our time, and Taylor, a brilliant scholar on race and politics, really sets the tone for the book.
How so?
It's history, it's theory, and it's action, all in one package.
Absolutely. Now, before we get started, I just have a quick disclaimer for everyone listening. The voices you are hearing come from AI, but the content comes straight from the book. And honestly, we feel that this is just a great way to learn about African American history. We thank you for listening, and please consider subscribing for future content.
Definitely.
And one last thing. After hearing this, we would really encourage you to go out and purchase this book and support the authors. It's one thing to hear us talk about it.
It's another thing to hold it in your hands.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, let's get into it. What is the specific mission driving this book? Because that title alone, Our History Has Always Been Contraband, it sounds like a challenge.
It is a challenge.
Yeah.
And to understand the book, you have to understand the specific moment it was born into. The editors are responding directly to recent political efforts across the U.S. to ban or restrict African American studies.
Okay.
They specifically cite the controversy over the the AP African American Studies course in Florida as kind of the flashpoint.
Right. I remember seeing that all over the news. It was a huge debate about what could and couldn't be taught to high schoolers.
Exactly. But the central thesis here, it isn't just about one syllabus or, one state. The editors argue that Black history isn't just some diversity project. It's not about self-esteem or just making students feel represented, though that might happen.
So it's not just a celebration, not just about saying, look, we were here too.
No, and that's a crucial distinction they make. They argue that Black studies is a serious intellectual discipline. It exists to interrogate structures of power, slavery, colonialism.
The heavy stuff.
The heavy stuff. And because it challenges the status quo, because it asks how power works and who has it, it gets treated as contraband.
Contraband. Let's pause on that word. It means what? Illicit goods?
Yeah.
Smuggling something illegal.
Exactly. Forbidden. Something the authorities have decided is dangerous for you to possess.
Yeah.
And the argument is that this knowledge itself is seen as dangerous to the established order.
That is a really strong image. So let's unpack this. Part one of the book is called How We Got Here. It deals with the current conflict, the legislation we're seeing now.
Right. And Robin D.G. Kelley has a really insightful essay here. He talks about the Stop WOKE Act in Florida and the specific topics they removed from that AP curriculum.
And it wasn't minor stuff.
No, they didn't just trim the edges. They stripped out things like the movement for Black lives, Black feminism, the case for reparations.
It feels like they were trying to sanitize it. But I know one term that keeps popping up, and I think a lot of people are confused by it, is critical race theory, CRT. The book breaks that down, right?
It does. And honestly, this might be one of the most important takeaways from this first section. In the book, they explain that critical race theory, legally speaking, is a high-level academic framework.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means it was designed to examine how racism is embedded in legal systems and policies.
Okay.
Rather than just being about individual prejudice.
So instead of asking, is this specific judge racist, CRT would ask, does the specific law produce racist outcomes?
Precisely. It looks at the machinery, not just the operator. But the book points out that political activists, and it specifically cites a man named Christopher Rufo, have recodified the term.
Recodified. That sounds like a marketing term.
It essentially is.
Oh.
It means they changed the definition to suit a political goal. The book quotes Rufo admitting the goal was to turn the brand toxic.
Wow.
They wanted to take critical race theory, this complex legal concept, and just make it a catch-all term for any cultural concept that's unpopular with conservative Americans.
So if you talk about race in a way that makes someone uncomfortable, or you bring up the history of slavery, it gets labeled CRT even if it has nothing to do with legal theory.
Exactly. It becomes a thought-terminating cliche. It just stops the conversation. And Keeanga-Yamahtta Taylor argues this is happening because Black studies is, by its very nature, political.
How so?
She writes that it was born out of struggle, out of the campus revolution to the 1960s. You can't separate the history from the struggle for freedom, and that is always going to be political.
That makes perfect sense. If you're studying how people fought for their rights, you are studying politics. There's no way to make that neutral.
Right, and that leads to this realization that, this isn't a 2023 problem.
The book's title says it has always been contraband, so this is a legacy.
It is, and that's the aha moment of the second part of the book, the history they don't want you to know. This pattern of banning literacy, banning books, it goes back centuries.
And there's an example from 1829 that really just blew my mind. David Walker's Appeal. Can you tell us about that?
Yes, David Walker. He was a free black man in Boston, and he wrote this pamphlet that was just this fiery intellectual attack on slavery and American hypocrisy. He wasn't asking nicely.
And the reaction wasn't just, a bad review.
No, it was declared contraband by the state. In fact, southern states passed laws making it a crime to teach any enslaved person to read, specifically to stop this book from circulating.
A crime to teach someone to read?
Yes. The book notes that just possessing this text was punishable by imprisonment or even death.
Death for a pamphlet.
That is how dangerous they consider the ideas to be. So when the editors title this book, they aren't using a metaphor. They are making a direct historical reference.
That really puts the current book bans in perspective. Controlling what people read has always been about controlling people.
It's a direct lineage. And another key figure in that lineage is Frederick Douglass. The book includes his famous 1852 speech, The Meaning of July 4th for the Negro.
Oh, that's a classic. But what's the specific angle the book takes on it?
It uses Douglass to challenge this myth of American exceptionalism. Douglass highlighted what he called the immeasurable distance between the white celebration of liberty on the 4th and the black reality of enslavement.
He was basically saying, what are you all celebrating? Because we're not part of this freedom.
Exactly. Holding up a mirror to the country. And that questioning is what makes the history dangerous. Moving forward in time, the book brings in W.E.B. Du Bois and his 1935 work, Black Reconstruction in America.
And this is where we get the term the propaganda of history. What did Du Bois mean by that?
Du Bois argued that history books were deliberately lying about the Reconstruction era, the period right after the Civil War.
Lying how? Just leaving things out.
Worse. They were rewriting the whole story. For a long time, textbooks taught that when black men got the right to vote and hold office, it was a total disaster, corrupt, ignorant, a failure.
I remember learning a version of that.
Right. But Du Bois did the research. He showed that this was false. He showed Reconstruction was actually a brief, successful moment of real democracy that was violently overthrown.
So why lie about it? Why teach generations that it was a failure?
To justify taking those rights away. If you teach kids that black voting led to chaos, you justify the Jim Crow laws that stopped black people from voting. The book connects us directly to today. Patriotic history often requires erasing the real struggles of black people.
It's incredible how the story we tell shapes the laws we live under. You control the past, you control the future.
It shapes everything.
Now, the book also moves into feminism, law, and systems. And there's another term here that gets thrown around a lot today, usually negatively, identity politics.
Yes. Another term like CRT that's been sort of recodified. But the book goes back to the source. The Combahee River Collective Statement from 1977.
A group of black feminists, right?
Yes. And they coined the term identity politics. But for them, it didn't mean dividing people into tribes. It meant recognizing that black women face this unique combination of oppressions.
What kind of oppressions?
Racial, sexual, heterosexual, class. All at once.
So it's about seeing the whole person in their specific situation. My politics are defined by my reality.
Exactly. They argued that because their oppression was so layered, their liberation would have to be the most radical of all. There's this famous insight from them in the book.
What is it?
If black women were free, it would mean that everyone else would have to be free, since our freedom would necessitate the destruction of all the systems of oppression.
That's profound. If you fix the problem for the person at the very intersection of all these issues, you fix the whole system.
You've lifted everyone. And this connects directly to Kimberly Crenshaw, who's also featured. She gave us the concept of intersectionality.
Another buzzword. Let's break that one down too.
It comes from the law. Crenshaw noticed the law treats race discrimination and gender discrimination as two separate things, two different buckets.
Okay.
But black women fall into both. So if a black woman faced discrimination, That wasn't just because she was black because the company hired black men, and not just because she was a woman because they hired white women.
She fell through the cracks of the legal system.
She fell through the cracks because her identity intersected. That's what the tool is for seeing those cracks. It's not about who is more oppressed. It's about how systems fail specific groups.
And speaking of systems, the book includes an excerpt from Michelle Alexander's The New Jim Crow. This is about the war on drugs, isn't it?
It is. Alexander argues the war on drugs functioned as a new system of racial control, very similar to the old Jim Crow laws.
But how? The laws apply to everyone on the surface.
That's the trap. She argues it targets black men for hyper-incarceration. Drug usage rates are similar across races, but black men are imprisoned at vastly higher rates.
And once you have a felony record,
you lose the right to vote. You can be discriminated against in housing, employment. It effectively strips you of your citizenship.
It recreates second-class citizenship, but uses the justice system instead of whites-only signs.
Correct. And to round all this out, the book features Ta-Nehisi Coates on the case for reparations. He links the current wealth gap directly to historical policies.
Like redlining and slavery.
Exactly.
Right.
Redlining, slavery, being excluded from things like the GI Bill. He argues the reason black wealth is lower isn't about behavior or culture. It's about centuries of policy that prevented black people from building wealth in the first place.
It really shows how all these things are connected. History, law, economics. You can't understand one without the others.
Which brings us to part 3 of the book, How We Fight Back.
I love this section. It feels so practical. It moves from here is the problem to here's what we do. And there's a story here I just love about the midnight school.
Yes, from an essay by Roderick A. Ferguson. He tells the story of Lillian Granderson, an enslaved woman in Mississippi.
And she was a teacher.
She was. But remember, teaching enslaved people to read was illegal. So she held secret schools from 12 a.m. to 2 a.m.
In the dead of night.
In the dead of night. And she taught hundreds of students this way.
That is incredible bravery. If she had been caught.
The consequences would have been severe. And the takeaway is that education has often had to happen in the shadows, underground, when the state forbids it. He argues that today's study groups, community libraries, even this conversation.
We're part of that tradition, the modern equivalent of the midnight school.
We are. That learning itself is an act of resistance. And Brea Baker's essay takes that idea and applies it to the books themselves. She talks about being outlaws.
Outlaws for liberation.
Yes. Her whole concept is, if our history has always been contraband, then we must be outlaws for liberation.
I love that. It completely flips the script. Instead of being ashamed this history is banned, you embrace learning it as an act of resistance.
Exactly. The book argues reading banned books is a form of self-defense.
So what does this all mean for us today, summing it all up?
Well, the book really serves 2 purposes. It is a history textbook with primary documents from Douglas and the Combahee River Collective, but it's also a manual.
A manual for what?
For understanding why this history is under attack today. It shows us the bans aren't random. They're part of a long political strategy to maintain power by controlling the narrative.
And I think the final question is, why should the average listener care? If you're not a historian or an activist, why does this matter?
Because you can't have a true democracy without facing reality. The book calls history a beautiful, ugly story.
Yeah.
If we only look at the beautiful parts, we're living in a fantasy. To build a society that actually works for everyone, you have to face the ugly parts too.
You have to face the contraband.
You do.
That's a powerful thought to leave us with. This book isn't just about the past. It's about whether we're brave enough to face the truth of our present.
Absolutely.
Well, that brings us to the end of this episode of the Mini Book Podcast, African American Books Edition. We really hope you found this discussion about our history has always been contraband as illuminating as we did.
It's a book that definitely demands to be read.
It sure does. And we want to thank you again for listening. Please, if you enjoyed this, consider subscribing for future content. We have so many more stories to uncover.
And tell a friend. Knowledge grows when you share it.
Exactly. And we have a specific request for you today. Please suggest in the comments books that you would like to hear in future episodes. We want to know what you want to learn about.
We read the comments, and we love the suggestions.
We do. Thank you for subscribing and listening. Until next time.